Hello everyone, I am Ihini, and today we will be discussing our ideal scenarios for early career archaeologists. So please join our anonymous survey using the codes on the slide. They will also be in the chat if you missed this, and we'll discuss everyone's answers at the end. So you can answer the questions at your own pace, but to guide you, there will be a Menti logo on any slide which has associated survey questions. So what does the archaeology sector look like right now? Archaeology is a broad field with individuals from interdisciplinary backgrounds, including historians, geologists, biologists, and anthropologists, to name a few. This diversity brings a wealth of perspectives, but one significant challenge is the absence of a cohesive central organization. Young archaeologists are advocating for transformative change, yet it's crucial to recognize the vision for change differs widely due to our diverse lived experiences and varying barriers to entering and thriving in the sector. So today we present to you what the ideal sector looks like for us. Meanwhile, you can tell us in the survey what is most important to you. In our vision, the sector is equal and diverse, with a central hub listing opportunities and support information. Young archaeologists will have ample mentoring and networking opportunities. Financial support will be robust, covering internships, pay, training, and commuting. And collaboration will be stronger between universities and organizations. But why listen to us? We are members of the CBA's Youth Advisory Board, representing young people from diverse backgrounds from across the UK, and we believe in the power of youth voice. So integrating youth perspectives ensures that initiatives, policies, and practices are more relevant to current needs. Actively involving youth fosters a sense of ownership and commitment, leading to greater participation and enthusiasm in projects and decision-making processes. And most importantly, valuing and incorporating youth voice contributes to a more inclusive environment where diverse perspectives are recognized and addressed. So share your voice on the survey about changes or resources that could assist your career. So today, we will be covering 3 key strategies: accessibility, opportunity, and financial barriers. Tell us in the survey how these impact early career archaeologists. We'll first be discussing the current circumstances and then move on to discuss your survey results. And I'll now hand it over to George.
Hi there. Accessibility can mean a number of things, but in this context, we mean accounting for and offering mitigation against barriers that some individuals may face in accessing places, jobs, or volunteering opportunities, events, or anything else in the sector. In this short section, it'd be unwise to try to account for all of these barriers. After all, while we may characterize them into themes or certain sources, such as disability, gender, or ethnicity, any individual experience of these factors will both be unique and, in most cases, intersectional. I'll therefore briefly try to cover just a few of them that we came up with talking ready for this. Traditional adjustments that come to mind might include step-free access or large print leaflets. These are all great examples of things that organizations can do in order to benefit their employees, volunteers, clients, and visitors. However, this approach is somewhat diminutive of just how much variety there is between disabilities and between different experiences of disability. Being proactive in this regard, then, is great, but could be better. In the last few weeks, Wessex Archaeology advertised for an archaeological support officer, whose job role included supporting an early career field archaeologist with autism spectrum disorder. While there was rightly some valid questions raised over what was required of the individual taking up this role, this job post shows a company in our sector thinking outside the box in a way that I am sure we can all see as promising. It shows them acknowledging the needs of an individual early career archaeologist and providing adjustments to fit the needs of the individual. It is this approach that we should be looking to incorporate more and more, so that archaeology becomes more accessible to all. This, of course, also applies to physical disabilities, where we should be looking at how people with a physical disability may be as involved as possible in archaeology, right the way through from excavation to visiting museums and heritage sites. When it comes to visitors, short-term volunteers, and the general public, we should perhaps switch to our focus to generating a culture of inclusion, where we all make it our responsibility to make our practice more accessible. This means being proactive and incorporating accessibility into our work, perhaps adopting a more accessible format in publications and communications, but also being reactive and responsible in actively encouraging people with disabilities to ask for any reasonable adjustments that they may need, knowing that organisations in our sector are responsive to these requests and will help wherever possible. We need a culture of inclusion then that aims to move beyond fulfilling legal duties and instead towards going above and beyond every time. Cost and practicality, of course, always matter, but increased accessibility means the increased involvement of individuals who can bring real and measurable benefit to the sector, both now and in the future. Investment in accessibility is therefore investment in the future of the sector and in the people who will drive it. Gender can be a barrier within the sector in a number of ways, some of which I will briefly try to cover here. Women are often forced into wearing ill-fitting workwear and PPE designed for men's shapes and sizes, or otherwise ones badly designed for women. Maternity can also play a key factor in this issue, with pregnant people having to navigate the world of workwear and PPE, usually made of materials that do not stretch, as their body is changing throughout pregnancy. These issues are dealt with very well by certain organisations, but we cannot consider the industry accessible in this regard until it is dealt with well by every organisation. Again, recognising individual physical differences is also important here. Physical differences come into play here, for example, with regard to heavy lifting and the increased prevalence of pelvic organ prolapse. These are just a couple examples of issues that have been shared and spoken about. It is important to recognise here that there are inevitably far more that are not. We're getting on in the presentation, so I'll try to be quick with these next two. The sector is still rife with sexism, with offensive and damaging comments and opinions far too often disguised as jokes. This is a hangover of the industry as it once was, and is the case in many industries. But it takes all of us calling it out in order to put an end to it once and for all. Starting a family can be difficult for anyone in field archaeology, with nights away from home and unpredictable income in some cases being incompatible in many cases with having and looking after children. The gendered aspects of this are complex, but there are some clear and obvious gendered factors, such as breastfeeding, which should be considered, with job security and options to remain in one place within commercial units to account for starting a family being priorities for consideration. There are so many more barriers to access in the sector than I have time to discuss. Accessibility is complex and individual. No two people have the exact same experience of barriers, nor the same way of overcoming them. While Jess will talk a little more about class and about financial barriers in a few minutes' time, I implore you to remember that accessibility means not one, not two or three, but hundreds of different things, and that being proactive should always include empowering a variety of voices so that we may better understand the barriers that people face and what we should be doing to help them to overcome them, allowing each and every person to be involved and to excel in every environment, no matter what background they come from or what challenges they currently face.
So that leads us nicely onto opportunity. I'd like to ask, what types of opportunities do you think are most lacking for young professionals in our sector? If you could fill that in on the survey, that would be great. So public perception of archaeology paints our day-to-days as an action film, finding lost treasures. Whilst often archaeologists do find treasure, the term treasure being very subjective depending on where you're at, the public often overlook the long hours, working in a variety of weathers, and the short-term nature of temporary contracts. Indeed, public perception of archaeology overlooks the wide range of jobs available and largely focuses on excavation. However, data from Profiling the Profession, a survey taken by 6,300 archaeologists just before the onset of COVID-19, highlights the range of job opportunities available in our sector. Whilst commercial archaeology takes up a large percentage, archaeology is so prevalent across local government, museums, universities, and local planning agencies. There is next slide, please, Ihini. So how do young people fare in seeking these jobs? Surely this range of job opportunities means the sector is easily accessible. Using job title data from back a slide, please, Ihini. Using job title data from Profiling the Profession and expressing it as a word cloud shows just how specialist our sector is. From small finds expertise to technicians, specialist knowledge underpins our jobs. As a result, university degrees are often essential paths to enter in the sector. For young people, we know how much the idea of going to university is pushed by schools and colleges as a way to make you stand out against other applicants. However, when looking at archaeology as a sector, 99% of those surveyed had a bachelor's or higher. 2/3 had a master's or above. It'd also be interesting to see how the pandemic has affected these numbers because of distance learning and remote learning. But with university fees at an all-time high and other training avenues a better way to enter the sector, well, it depends where you live. There is a real regional disparity in northern versus southern archaeological organisations, reflecting wider inequalities across the UK. Headland Archaeology even advise on their website that digging the circuit is a rite of passage. For those not close to a unit, travel away from home is essential, especially when taking a career on site. Archaeology just seems to operate in this hierarchical way, with it expected that in order for you to get the more permanent office-based jobs, you must just work your way up the ladder. So let's start from on-site jobs then, if we're going to start with what's expected entry level. So these are taken from a variety of entry-level on-site jobs currently available and show that the ability to drive is often very essential in order to gain a job. With driving lessons again at an all-time high, as well as, the maintenance of a car, petrol, etc. This is just something that not all can afford. Even in post-excavation jobs, the ability to drive gives you an advantage over others, especially combined with living close to site. Tie this into job instability. The expectation to move around, survive in these short-term temporary contracts again appears a rite of passage in order to gain more permanent all-year-round jobs. Even internships, which provide much-needed skills and experiences, can cease suddenly when funding runs out. So, opportunity. Whilst there are a wide range of roles in archaeology, our industry is so specialist. A university degree doesn't necessarily offer a road into the sector, with competition very, very fierce. Driving too is an essential, as is the need to work away from home.
I'm going to be brutally honest with you here, Mike. Given your track record, your options are going to be extremely limited.
So, how effective are certain strategies in creating more job opportunities and career advancements in the sector? If you could answer that, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jess. I'll be covering the financial barriers section. I think it's important to mention that accessibility, everything mentioned before, all is massively impacted by these financial barriers. We've covered university, careers, volunteering, excavation expenses, but obviously there's many more that won't fit as nicely into neat categories. Next slide. University is increasingly expensive, from the rise in tuition costs for the 2017-2018 academic year to the maintenance loan not rising enough with inflation to reflect the current cost of living. The majority of students' maintenance loans ultimately goes towards rent, meaning many students rely on a part-time job while studying. Despite this, university roles require, early career roles require a university degree. There is a number of growing apprenticeships targeting young people without a university degree, organised through Historic England and recently one at the Speaker's office within the House of Commons. But these are they're not highlighted in schools in the same way apprentices into like plumbing or electricity is. Deeply limited, quite underfunded. When excavating as a student, there are also a number of additional hidden costs. Money for food and drink, travel and accommodation. Most archaeology degrees provide fieldwork as part of the degree, but universities may not be eager to provide funding for students studying degrees such as history or classics, putting these students on the back foot, and a career in sector even less achievable. I've highlighted the current cost of excavating with dig ventures at Lindisfarne. Even 2 days is a huge fee, and this isn't including travel, food, or accommodation. I don't think students have this like in their pocket to drop on a dig if the universities can't fund it, and this experience is massively required for a lot of jobs. Again, volunteering seems to be expected within the sector. This is deeply exclusionary. University students often don't have the time to volunteer alongside their degrees and work. And also, not everyone is in close proximity to a museum, historical house, or an archaeological site where they would gain this experience. They either have to spend an extortionate amount on public transport or lose out. Recent graduates also can't really afford to volunteer for prolonged periods of time without pay. You wouldn't expect people going into consulting or law to volunteer for a law firm for 18 months, hoping they'll get their foot in the door at an office job, like a front desk. And it's quite upsetting seeing other like university graduates straight into jobs, knowing early career people have to volunteer in a museum for a while. This again leads to the exclusion and stagnation of careers. It's expected that young people have experience. Graduates often specify they want graduates to experience the conservation, archiving, object handling, but this isn't very achievable or realistic. When in actual employment, pay is often quite low. Pay grades aren't centralised like they are within the civil service, and contracts are often for a fixed term, leaving early career professionals with limited job security. Of all the roles advertised on the University of Leicester's job board as of 17th July 2024, 62 out of 200 are fixed term, 79 out of 200 are permanent. It's worth highlighting a few organisations that do advocate for progress within the sector. The Museum Association published a pay review and provided recommendations to the sector, and Fair Museum Jobs consistently advocates on X, Twitter, for fair pay, higher transparency, and fairness.
So we're not going to look at your poll results. Please bear with us because I'm looking at your results for the first time right now. Some key phrases for change in the sector seem to be accessibility, pay, equity, collaboration, mentoring. You also told us about changes or resources to aid in your career, and some important themes here are guidance and support for accessing careers, funding, more opportunities to network, central point for resources, etc. So financial constraints seems to be most severely impacting young people entering the sector, followed closely by lack of job opportunities. So most respondents agree that professional development resources in archaeology are somewhat inaccessible. So while 22% of you think that creating pathways or support systems to help overcome economic barriers would benefit early career professionals in archaeology, 17% of you also think that improved disability assistance and awareness would greatly be of help. While 25% of you think paid placements and internships are most lacking for young professionals in the field, it's closely followed by 21% of you thinking that accessible community excavations and dig schools are also lacking. So the implementation of career development programs seems to be the most effective strategy voted by you for creating more job opportunities and career advancements, closely followed by a stronger relationship between universities and heritage organizations and development of early career networking resources. So while 30% of you have faced high costs of necessary training and certifications, 25% have faced low starting salaries or expensive networking events and conferences. While most of you believe that paid internships, volunteering positions, scholarships, grant and bursaries, as well as centralized pay grades and support for covering costs would help alleviate financial constraints greatly, expansion of apprenticeship programs for those without university degrees are also moderately helpful. And finally, we asked you to share with us any opinions about things we couldn't cover today. Thank you very much for participating in this survey. We shall be looking at these in more detail following today's presentation to pick actionable changes that we can work on. Thanks again for participating in this, and I shall hand it over to George to wrap it up.
Thanks, Ihini. So what's next? It's all well and good us identifying these points of concern amongst young people, but what could actually be done? This is what we and the Youth Advisory Board as a whole are beginning to think about. Gathering further information and more individual experiences will help to strengthen our arguments as we move forwards and will help us to drive positive change. If young people ran the sector for the day, what would it look like? Well, it might look something like this. Next is for us to realise this in a tangible project which could have real and measurable impact on young people in and adjacent to the sector. What this looks like exactly is something we would like your opinion on. We might, for example, develop opportunities to train and upskill young people, but this is just one of many options. Returning to the beginning of this paper, how can we use youth voice to promote positive change? It is important that the Youth Advisory Board, as young career professionals and students, represents the needs and wants of other young people, and that we find and use our platform to elevate your voice and your opinions. These are just a few of the ideas that we came up with of real and non-tokenistic efforts that we can make to help young people in the sector. We are in the process of planning our main Youth Advisory Board project, and so we are open to all thoughts and ideas. Please do send them over to us, whether to us individually or through the Council for British Archaeology, and keep an eye out for us in the coming months so that we can keep you involved in driving positive and lasting change. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming along, and we hope to see from you and hear from you all again soon.